I love quantum physics because it gives us a view into the invisible. It's amazing. It's particles too small to see, but valid first thought experiments and then research that confirmed them showed us the weird and wonderful ways of the subatomic world. And one of those phenomenon is called quantum entanglement, and I have spoken about this a lot because I love what it illustrates about the wisdom of God. What it basically shows us, Einstein called it spooky action at a distance. He kind of didn't believe in it, actually, even though it was his math that led to its prominence and subsequent demonstration in the lab. But particles that have a shared history or undergo an experience together actually remain in an intimate, faster than light knowledge of each other, even after they're separated by miles. And they've proven this with particles that they've entangled in the lab and then separated. And when one flips spin, the other one responds to be complementary to that, even though they're not together anymore. If you're a Christian, you know that quantum entanglement is just being in the spirit. You know that you are touched with the feelings of somebody else's infirmity sometimes, and you don't even yet know what's happened to them when you're in relationship. And you know that Jesus and the race of mankind that is all of us were entangled, quantum entangled on the cross. We have a shared history and a shared experience on the cross, and therefore we are forever entangled. And that means when I go through something, I'm not disconnected from the deliverance to that thing in Him. So there's huge, comforting, wonder-filled implications to the real thing that's called quantum entanglement. But I got an article in my news feed recently, and basically what has just happened, I got this yesterday. What just happened is physicists have broken the record for the number of particles they could quantum entangle at one time. And the title of the article is Physicists Entangle 15 Trillion Hot Atoms. And the first line of it says, physicists set a new record by linking together a hot soup of 15 trillion atoms in a bizarre phenomenon called quantum entanglement. This finding could be a major breakthrough. And I think it's a record of how many particles you could get to entangle. But here's the other thing. Usually they do this entanglement. They've learned to carry it out in very, 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 very cold temperatures to slow the action down and make the entanglement more stable. But somebody had the idea, let's try it in a hot mess. So this article literally describes the conditions that they got this record entanglement, 15 trillion particles, as hot and messy. And people had only thought they could pull it off in the lab in cold. What does that say? Man, if 15 trillion particles could get entangled in a hot and messy environment, and again, the thinking prior to this was that the hot environment would be too messy. In fact, it would be too unstable to actually create valid entanglements. Nevertheless, it turned out something else was going on, and that's exactly what created them. I hope you see where I'm going with this. There is hope today that even in a hot mess, there are quantum entanglements, not natural binding entanglements, but there are spiritual lasting entanglements that we can have with each other and with the kingdom of God that will affect our lives, that will keep us informed even when we're distant, that will keep us, and I mean spiritually informed, I don't just mean this informed, keep us flowing in the right direction. There is hope for unity in the kingdom of God. If 15 trillion particles can break a record for quantum entanglement right in the middle of a hot mess, when they thought they had to have frigid laboratory temperatures to pull this off, and instead somebody thought, let's try a hot mess. And lo and behold, it broke the record. I want to declare over you, over me, over the church, over us as a nation, God is going to do stuff. God is going to do stuff in the middle of our hot messes. Quantum entanglement is preaching to me today, and it's saying you have got to stop trying to perfect everything, because you've really got one job, and that's look to me for the connections that I make, for the appointments that I make, for all that I do to relate heaven to earth, permanently entangled, and to relate the individual players to each other. So today, let's look to that realm beyond the visible. Let's look to God's invisible realm, not just quantum physics, but God's realm. And let's believe that He is capable of doing more than we've asked or think. The connections we have are not as fragile as we think. That's why they did it at cold temperatures, because they thought these connections would be so fragile they wouldn't work with the added energy of heat. When God makes connections, they're not nearly so fragile. You can take heart in His connection-making ability.